What is up, guys? It's Dan the Man, and today I'm back with round 3 of the 2026 May Action Tournament held here at Chess Zone. And going into round 3, I have a score of 1 out of 2. We lost round 2 against Caden Qiao. I went into a questionable endgame, but it was very interesting, very instructive, and where I sacrificed the exchange and tried to have some compensation with my pawns, but it ultimately did not work out. And in round 3, I'm paired against a person named Arturo Imberno, rated 1908 USCF, and I'm asterisking his rating because his FIDE is around 2100. Even though he hasn't played a FIDE in a long time, he's reached that expertise in the past, and the 1900 rating is a red herring. It's not his true playing strength. So I knew who I was going up against, and we played previously in the past, and we drew. So here... And he also had white in that first game too, I think. But anyway, here I have the black pieces. He goes e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. And here he plays the Spanish opening with bishop to b5. And here I go with the Berlin, knight f6. He goes queen e2, which is a move that I have not really seen before. And that caused me to pause for a little bit, because I didn't know how to respond to it. And the threat here is that he's defending his pawn with his queen and then threatening the trade on c6 and win the pawn on e5. So, but the engine says you can ignore that. You can play bishop c5 here. And I plugged in some moves here. You can play, if white plays bishop takes c6, you take with the b pawn, they take on e5. It is true they are up a pawn, but you can play the move queen e7 here, already threatening to win the pawn back. If the knight goes to f3, for instance, you take on e4. But I'm like, what if white's really stubborn and they don't want to give the pawn back? What if white plays f4? The engine says, fine, it's not bad. You go d6, knight takes c6, so right now white is up 2 pawns out of the opening, and yet it's equal. It is true you get 1 pawn back. Queen takes e4, queen takes e4 check, knight takes e4, and knight c3, some moves like this. After this trade, you are getting the pawn back, but it's not really immediate. As you can see, it took several moves to recover the material. After bishop b7, you are winning the pawn back officially, because once the knight retreats, you would take on g2. And this position's interesting to play out, but just the fact that you're giving up 2 pawns and not recovering them for a couple moves is a little bit unsettling, especially this early in the game. But this is a move. This is a sideline that I'll keep in the back of my mind, and I'll know that it's totally fine to give the pawns up temporarily. But here I didn't know that at the time, and I played d6 because I was worried that he would win a pawn. Which is, I mean, in it of itself, a totally fine move. So here he played the move d4, a move I was expecting, very common when you go d6 to play d4, and a lot of openings, not just e4, e5 ones. And here, I first wanted to take the pawn, which is actually the best move, but I was worried about e5 coming. And because his queen's on the e-file, he's actually just threatening to just open my king up with e takes d6 or e takes f6, depending on what I do. But the engine's like, okay, just take it. And after knight takes, like, I was in my mind really afraid of this position. Like, I thought it was like white is just crushing here because they have a threat on c6 with their bishop and knight, and they're threatening to play a discovered check on my king in the center. Like, this is just very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. But here the engine, of course, finds a way to make it equal. Apparently, I have to remember this next time I face this. You play bishop to b4 check. White's only move is c3. And here you play the really surprising move castles. And you just leave the bishop to hang, but you kind of had to castle because, again, the threat on your king in the center is just too great. And it is true, you are giving up the bishop here. But if the bishop is taken, you are just totally winning here after knight takes e5. And after queen takes e5, you play the move c6. And you have threats of rook e8 and to pin the queen. So after you play c6 here, white can't save their bishop because you pinned the queen. So white would have to castle, and then you would take back, and black is having a -2 position. So that is the logic behind how castling can result in black being much better here, which is just absurd in my opinion. Like, I have to remember all this. Alternatively, white might think they can take the knight on c6 with their bishop, and then take. And this version looks bad too, because as you can see, white is up a piece here, but the engine says it's equal. But to a human, this is not natural. You don't want to give this to your opponent. Black can play rook e8, pinning the knight to the queen, and there are moves like queen d6 and like moving the knight followed by f6 to win the piece back. And if white tries to castle, the engine suggests knight d5, and the threat of f6 to win the knight back is actually pretty hard to prevent. Yeah, like, if white just does a normal move, you just play f6 here and win the piece back. But I'm like, what if queen h5 happens? What if, they defend the knight from a different angle? Then you play the move g6, and the queen has to return to the e-file, and you play f6 anyway. So just these like lucky moves that I overlooked. These are just really unnatural for a human to play if they haven't studied this. So just giving that temporary material advantage is also unnatural. So that's why I didn't go into that. Also, you can play the move queen e7, which is not as good, but it's still a move. And it does block the e-file, but I'm like, how about just knight c6? Doesn't that just win material? And here you have to trade queens, and then you play this move a6. This is pretty cool stuff. a6. And white doesn't have any useful discovered checks. And there's two pieces hanging. And if white tries to keep the bishop on the diagonal, you play the move bishop d7, and you create a pin. So all these like moves are like really clutch for black, but you have to know that they exist, otherwise you're just losing. But I didn't know this at the time, but now I do. So that was why I was scared of e5. So instead, I played bishop d7, which is a bit of a mistake, and it's +1 here. So here, Arturo takes on c6. I take back. He takes on e5. I played knight takes on e4. And here he plays this great move, knight d4, very aggressive. The threat is to take the bishop on c6, followed by queen takes e4. And I have only two moves to really be equal here, either d5, which is what I played in the game, or queen d7. Otherwise, I'm just totally cooked. So here, after d5, he takes the bishop. I recapture. He plays knight to d2. I decide to trade. He takes with the bishop. And here, I was almost immediately going to develop my bishop to either e7 or c5. But I was worried about queen g4 happening. And if I castle here, he has bishop h6, and I have to give up an exchange to prevent checkmate. So that was what I was worried about. And I was also not really wanting to play king f8 or g6 to defend the pawn. That looked pretty weakening. So that was why I didn't develop the bishop, because I would undefend my pawn for the time being, and I didn't want that. But here the engine says you can go queen d7, totally unhuman move. Give this pawn up, and then long castle, where the pawns are split. And white is up a pawn here, but it's only 0.8. And this is just a very unhuman approach to playing this out. So, yeah, this is something I would never play, and apparently it's equal, but I digress. So that's why I was scared of developing the bishop, and I instead played queen d7 right away, so as to control the square. And here Arturo castled, and I played bishop e7, And now I'm not worried about queen g4 happening because I have that covered. And next move, I'm going to castle. So here we played rook f to e1. I castle. And time-wise, I am up about 8 or 9 minutes on time. Here he played rook on a to d1, and this is just going to be a very positional battle here. It's just about rerouting and maneuvering our pieces and creating little cracks in our opponent's positions to hopefully break through. So here I reposition the bishop to c5, getting it on a more active diagonal. I'm also preventing him from playing e6 to try to trade, because after e6, I would trade, and you can't take because the f file would open, and I would take on f2. I hope you guys can see that. So here, he plays the move bishop to e3. I think for a bit about whether to keep the tension or trade. I decide to trade. He plays queen takes e3, and white has a slight advantage, like 0.7, 0.8-ish. Not terrible. It's more or less still equal. So here I play queen e6. I wanted to blockade the square because I didn't want him to trade into the endgame, because I, for some reason, thought I'd be worse because of my pawn structure. So that's why I just blockaded the square. In here, he plays f4. Very good move. He's trying to gain some kingside space. I play rook on a to b8, trying to create some counterplay on the queen side. He plays b3, and I have to address the threat of queen takes a7 over here. So I play the move rook b6. Not the best move, but it's not horrible. And white has a plus 1.4 advantage. So here he plays queen d3, threatening f5 here, which would be really bad, because he would play f6 next move and open my king side up. Just to show that real fast, after I play a random move, just to show you how bad it is, like f5, and white is already cruising here. Like, I move my queen, they go f6, and they're opening my king up like a can of sardines. I don't want that. So my goal was for a long time in this game was to prevent the move f5. So here I do that with g6. It also creates a left for my king in the future. So here he plays rook f1. He's being very adamant about creating the f5 threat. But here I play queen e7, and I'm actually not scared of f5 here, because he moved his rook away from the e-file, he would hang the e5 pawn, and I would be fine. So that's why he can't play f5, because he would undefend the e-pawn. So here he played the move rook f3, and it's, again, going back to 0.8 advantage from 1.5, so he is slightly misplaying this. I go f6 here. Apparently not a great move. He plays rook to e1, and here I play f takes e5, rook takes e5. This was, again, not the best way to go about it. And here I play the move queen d6, and it's plus 2.3 here, so it's actually, white is just way better positionally. I told you this would be a positional game. And I'm actually making sort of a threat here, so let's pretend white doesn't see it. If white plays the move, like a random move like a4, you play rook takes f4, and I would win a pawn here, because I would remove the guard of the rook on e5. And that's what I'm threatening here with queen d6. But he saw that with queen e3. Now that tactic doesn't work, because, well, his queen's there. And for a long time here, I spent a long time on this move. I narrowed the time advantage I had to only a couple minutes from 10 or 12. So here I was thinking for a long time about playing the move rook b5. Again, my idea is to try to stop the move f5 at all costs, because it would be very lethal towards my king. My king is a bit exposed here. And he can't play f5, because that would blunder this tactic d4, opening an attack on the queen and also double attacking the rook. And he can't save both threats, so if he were to play f5, he would just lose a bunch of material. But I knew he wouldn't do that. I was just showing the point. I was worried he would go queen takes a7, and I lose a pawn for nothing. And I thought, for a second, I could play rook takes f4, but he could just take that. And after this is what I saw in my mind. I can't take this rook because there's queen a8 check, and king g7, there's queen f8 checkmate. And that's what I saw. Like, I can't enter this line to recover my pawn because I end up getting mated or losing a material. So that's why I didn't go rook b5 here, because it would just hang the a7 pawn. So here I go with d4, attacking the queen. He goes queen e2, and here I go rook b5 now. And the best move for him is to keep the rook on the board, on the e-file, with like rook e6 or something. But to my relief, he trades rooks, and that alleviates a lot of the pressure he was building up. He plays rook takes b5, I take back, queen takes b5, and here I play rook takes f4. There are no forks or anything like that. I don't need to be worried about it. And we enter this drawn queen endgame with pawns on both sides of the board. It's queen and 5 pawns versus queen and 5 pawns. And at this point in the game, he had 12-ish minutes and I had 20, so I did have a bit of a time advantage, which was favorable because maybe he would feel lower on time and blunder in a time scramble. So here he played queen e8 check. I moved to g7. He played queen e2 so as to defend his pawns because I was starting in queen c1 check. Here there's just a ton of moves. I make something. I play h5. He plays g3 to get my queen out. I go queen d6. He goes queen to e4. I go queen to c5, threatening to push this pawn and open to discovery. He plays king to g2. I go with a5. He goes a4. I go king f6. And here with 10 minutes, he plays queen f4 check. And after king e6, I had 16 minutes. So queen e4 check, I play king f7. I knew he was trying to go for a draw, but I sort of wanted to move my king somewhere else so as to keep the game going and maybe trying to get him into a time scramble. Here he played king f3. I played queen c3 check. He played king f4. I played queen d2 check, forking his king and h-pawn. He played king e5. Here I played queen takes h2. He played queen f4 check, and here he has me in a vortex of checks I can't escape from. King g7, queen f6 check, king h7, queen f7 check, king h6 to keep the pawn defended. And here I knew he was just going to check me forever, which was fine because it was drawn either way. Queen f8 check. If I go to g5, I would mate myself with queen f4, so don't do that. I'm forced to go back to h7, queen f7, king h6, and I knew he was just going to repeat endlessly. So queen f4, king g7, queen f6, and here we agreed to a draw. We split the half point here. I actually kind of got lucky here because as you saw by the engine, white was having like a +2 positional advantage, and I managed to not let up and defend accurately, and he didn't convert in the best way, the advantage, so I kind of saved the game in a way. And if we take a look at the accuracy, we both played almost nearly identical, him at 89.8 and I played at 89.7. So very good game, good accuracies. Again, I got lucky by not letting him overwhelm me positionally. He didn't play in the best manner, and that's what let us save the game. And especially against the 2100 FIDE, I'll take that result any day of the week. So we have a score of 1.5 out of 3 going into the round 4, and looking to have a good result in the last game, which I'll share soon. And if you guys like this game, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like the video or subscribe. And let me know what you thought of the game. And yeah, have a great rest of your day or night. Bye.